All right. My name is Chris Bernier. I am part of Sub 5 Race Management, and we're partnering with C5K Sports to put on this spring half marathon. It starts and ends in Newburyport at Cashman Park, but we will, with your permission, be running through your town on Middle, Garden, and Rogers Street. It would start at about 9 o'clock, so we'd be starting to hit your town about probably 9:30 and probably be here for about an hour with about 1,000 runners. I am very familiar with the town and those roads in particular. The Green Stride race that runs through there using this exact same course in October. My team was actually the logistics team that handles that for Eli. And I'm also the logistics coordinator for the loco race that comes through West Newbury. So I'm very familiar with how to handle all of this in your town, and I've worked with the police before, and I'm more than happy to do whatever it is we need to A, make it safe, B, make sure the neighbors are happy.
Okay, so in regards to that, so you're going to have porta potties by Browns Lane.
Yeah.
We kind of like to have them in and out ASAP.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So I will talk to the.
How can we, how can we shorten that as much as possible? I guess. Yeah.
I will talk to the portal company. Usually they like to deliver on a Friday, but I know that is asking a lot. So what I will do is see if we could do a just-in-time delivery, even Saturday night. And if I can't do that, I can literally have.
So it's a Sunday event?
It is a Sunday morning event, yeah. So what we can do is when they're empty like that, I have no problem taking 2 from Cashman Park and then bringing them there Sunday morning and delivering them just in time, just so they're not sitting there on Saturday night overnight.
Porta potties?
What's that?
The porta potties?
Yeah, the porta potties. Yeah. We can put them on a trailer really easy and just bring them over, and then take them away as soon as we're done with the event. It's not that hard to do. It's not like we're having 1,000 people use it. Yeah. So if that's something to help compromise with that, we'd be more than happy to, because I know it can be an eyesore.
Forget the eyesore, it's the kids want to knock it over.
Oh, okay, yeah. So to not have it
Not
there.
kids, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, exactly.
But whomever.
Yeah. So I will
Or
make
steal
sure.
it at the middle of the night, or
Yeah.
drive into it.
Yeah, so we'll make sure it's there on Sunday morning when we appear there. So we'll take it from, we'll have a stash of them at Cashman Park, so we'll just bring 2 over. And the reason why they're there is we're gonna have a relay station right there, because there's gonna be we're gonna have a relay race. And in the past, in handling for Eli and whatnot, to have other cars and a whole bunch of people in there has always been a cluster. I've never liked that, so now that I'm in control, we're actually going to hire a bus to bring people in and out. So we're literally going to have one bus.
So people are going to be starting there.
There's going to be a relay starting and ending point right there, right? But it'll all be controlled via a school bus that would be renting. So there won't be piles of cars going in and out.
What mile marker is that?
That's about mile 6.5 or so. So I don't know how many. I'm guessing we'll have about 100 teams. So might have 200 people at the most transitioning, but the school bus will be coming in and out of there over between.
Well, certainly you would, because people will be starting, they'll want to use the porta potties, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we'd have the portos there for that exact reason, just so that they're not going into the woods, which is what we're trying to avoid. And of course, we'll have trash buckets there as well that make sure it's all cleaned up. So in regards to traffic, we're going to minimize it with the school bus, and we'll encourage people to cycle there if they want to. And we'll work with any of the police at the corners, or if we want one stage there, I'd be more than happy to pay for one of those as well. So if I'm personally not out in that spot, I'll have one of my main guys who does this for me all the time, making sure it's managed. And traffic shouldn't be hindered at all in regards to shutting down the road. If anything, for safety, we might have to have a car stop for 30 seconds, 60 seconds at the most to let a clump of runners go by. But we have no anticipation of shutting down any of the roads in full. So.
Okay, I had one more comment about item 11. Let's see what you guys think about it. So, do we want to have signs out a week in advance, or just? I kind of like a day or two rather than sitting around for a week, but that's just my personal opinion. What do you guys think?
I personally don't have a problem with it being a week, because if it's only a day or two, not
People might not see
yeah,
them.
people may not see them.
I know, I just hate more signs.
I understand. But a day or two, that's almost like the day of the event. If you left, it needs to be more than that.
Okay.
The one thing, the complaints that we get, not about this particular race, but any race, that
Yep.
people aren't notified.
Okay.
And all of a sudden but there's not gonna be any road closures, so, some people come home with their ice cream.
Yeah,
They can't get down their street.
yeah.
That's been, a
Yeah.
complaint. And, but,
So do you guys have any side ordinances where I can't put them on the telephone poles or anything, or what do you? 'Cause my plan was,
We can't, the town doesn't have jurisdiction over the telephone poles, so
you do whatever you wanna
you have to
do.
ask National Grid, but that's not my problem.
okay. Okay. So,
good luck getting a hold of them.
yeah, I know, right?
The thing I wanted to ask about is I noticed, between this and, there are 3 other events and the different sign sizes. I'm just wondering, what is the limitation in zoning regs for signs?
That's about
Is it
right.
2 by 3? I just
That's
wanted to
about
make sure we
right.
weren't gonna be,
Mm-hmm.
with a 2 by 3 foot sign. Whatever, I mean, we just don't want to exceed whatever the planning board regulation says for sign sizes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're, this big,
Yeah,
bright yellow,
yeah,
just to
yeah,
say, hey, by
yeah.
the way, we're gonna have some runner
Yeah,
traffic.
yeah.
Our phone number's
Yeah,
on there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not objecting to the signs, I just, rather than
We just
create,
can't quite remember what the dimensions.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mike, do you know?
Which, or 2 by 3 in this case. That would work just as well.
If you turn them a different way, then they'll really attract attention. and
Yeah, if you turn them
people
sideways,
will
then,
read
yeah.
them more if
Right.
they're cockeyed.
Yeah.
So, can I ask, are you done, Archie? Can I ask you a
Yeah.
question? It seems like we have been approving, I've been a selectman for a couple of years, like 12, maybe 13. Over the last couple of years, are people just getting fit, or are they just like our roads? Because it seems like we're
That's a
getting,
good point.
Yeah.
we're getting more and more and more and more of these, almost to a point where I'm thinking we gotta start limiting it.
Yeah.
We're like.
You know what I mean by that?
we're
Just
like-
because
we're
it's just-
becoming Brookline, yeah.
Yeah, it's just almost too much.
Yeah.
I mean, is it, like you said, you're using a different, the same route we probably approve in October, but why? Is it just because nobody else is letting you do it? And there's a lot of restrictions, and we're just kinda naive? Or are the roads good and less travel, that type of stuff? I don't know, I'm just curious.
It's a
My
good,
own,
it's a good question.
No, I'm happy to answer.
The numbers have
Yep.
gone up, yeah.
I can't speak for the other races. I know we chose this because I'm familiar with the route, and Newburyport, they have that congested downtown area, and they really don't want us to go on the right side of Route 1, if you're looking at a map. And so, we're just trying to kind of get away from the downtown at all, and there's no really great way to do it except, coming through this way. Add on, now that they've shut down Middle Road with the bridge, it makes it great for running, to be honest. And it really, because there's no through traffic there. So from a logistics standpoint, it makes it really easy for us to keep people safe. In regards to people getting fitter, and from somebody that's been in the industry for 15 years, I've been running semi-professionally for longer than that. I do races from Caribou, Maine to Key West, Florida, San Diego. It's a trend.
it's a long run, Caribou, Maine.
Yeah, it is a very long ride. I'm really tired too. Yeah.
But I mean, if you,
yeah.
you get to stay in Key West then afterwards.
Yeah, it's not too bad at all. It's I get a lot of requests saying, hey, we want to raise money for this. We want to put on a 5K. And so everybody has this idea that they can make $1 million, put on a 5K for their charity. And so I think they try it once or twice. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So that's where you probably, my guess is you see some come and go.
Okay, I was just curious,
Yeah.
because I don't know, because I'm surprised, honestly, that residents haven't said, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Enough's enough,
I mean, a lot of towns actually start to come up when you have a beautiful town like this with really great roads to run on. You actually may want to consider putting together a plan where somebody like me comes in, like you already have, like, okay, you're a road race. Here's our exact, exactly what we expect of you. I know some like Brookline you mentioned, some of these other towns, they A, limit it, and B, they have a set rules, not just a general event permit, but something to it, just so the
Very
neighbors.
specific.
Yeah, very, very specific. to
So
running
I
events.
noticed that the comments from the chief when you, on this, it says too detailed with cruises, you have no problem with that?
I have no problem with that. Yeah, so I know exactly which 2 corners they be on. I've worked with them with that. Yeah.
And it is for-profit race?
Yeah. Well, actually, we're supporting the YWCA in Newburyport, and so that's a majority of it. But we'd be more than happy to for our our aid stations for the local high school or junior high or any local club to, donate to them if they want to help us out at our aid station and whatnot. We'd be, and I got a kid in college I gotta pay for, so.
Say it again?
I got a kid in college I gotta pay for, so yeah, so I do make money off of it.
Oh. Well, we generally, I don't know if this is appropriate to say, but we generally hold people hostage for a donation to, a local charity.
Yeah.
Maybe, we're trying to build a playground behind the elementary school. That
Yeah.
might be just a,
Yeah, we'd love to.
not much, I mean, whatever.
We'd love to be a part. Whenever we go to a community, the last thing we want to do is, A, we always try to leave it as good, if not better, but B, dumping it back into the community or pouring back into it is always a priority, because there's no, we're all good neighbors, we all want to help each other out, so we'd want to.
It's gone to, the historical.
No, but that's the best.
Yeah, it's
that's
gone
The
to the
playground,
garden
you think
club,
would be-
it's gone to-
Yeah.
different years, I just
Yeah.
come up with this thing.
Yeah, so-
I came out, thought about it years ago, so then.
So the playground would be the one that you guys would.
You'd have to talk to, we got the special events thing through the finance department, that would be the best one to talk to.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Yeah, I'll talk to them, and we'd be more than happy to make that a part of our
Make a
donations.
motion to approve with all the stipulations set forth in the special events application.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much, I much appreciate it.
Joy?
If you want a free t-shirt, then
Yeah, I don't think they'll fit.
Next one is
West Newbury Awareness Walk for Williams.
the West Newbury Awareness Walk for Williams. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
So my name is Krista Niles, and I'm here today on behalf of the Feudo family. This is our 5th annual year of putting on the West Newbury Walk for Williams, so we're seeking your approval for the 5th year. It's slated to be May 17th, which is a Sunday. The walk begins right here at the annex. We have usually 2 West Newbury police officers who help us cross the street. We walk on the crosswalks, on the sidewalks down to the training field where we turn around, we come back, and the officers meet us again. Once we get back to the annex, then it's a great community or family event with DJ and dancing and face painting, all in the name of Williams syndrome. So the Feudo family has Victoria. She's a freshman at Pentucket High School. So I started teaching her back when she was in 4th grade at Page School. So raising awareness for Williams syndrome just right here in the West Newbury community.
I didn't have any comments about this one.
Nope. And I'd like to make a motion that we would approve and waive any set fees that there are.
I'll second that.
Angus, you have a comment?
I would just note for discussion, you probably noticed that this and the next event are both on the same date, and Annie Sterling did work closely with the organizers of both to make sure that there would be no actual conflict in
Right.
terms of routes and overlap and so forth.
Second?
A second.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is going to be the, is it a bike race or a road race?
Anybody- is
Bike
anybody
race
here
for
with the American Diabetes Association?
Diabetes Association. And that would be also on May 17th.
All these on the same date?
Yeah, same date, but it shouldn't be a conflict.
Just the last one and this one, not all 4.
My name is Bob Cook. I live in Newburyport. I'm on the committee that runs the North Shore Tour de Cure. We start and end out of the Topsfield Fairgrounds. Down there we have a 5K run and a walk, a 15-mile bike ride, a 30-mile bike ride, And coming in this direction is the 62 and 100-mile bike rides. We come out of Georgetown, I guess that's South Street. I don't know if it changes names coming out of Georgetown.
Coming out of Byfield, maybe.
Out of
Yes,
Byfield.
yeah, South
Yep.
Street's actually in West Newbury. I think, isn't it called North Street when it's in Georgetown?
Yeah, it
And-
flips
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah, I think it's
We
North Street,
come, then we
Georgetown,
come
South
through
Street, yeah.
Byfield and come into you guys. I would guess that's off Scotland Road or up in that general direction.
Right.
Come down, then we,
You've done this before, right?
I think this is probably the 10th year, 12th
Yeah,
year.
okay.
This cure to, this Tour de Cure, that's not used for anything else, that,
Just the American Diabetes
yeah. so, yeah,
Association.
Yeah, this has been, I didn't know if it was used for any other organizations, but no, yeah, you guys have done this.
Yep, strictly the American Diabetes. We normally,
So it does look like it goes on, it does go on 113 at, that would be the 100-mile.
Comes up Bridge Street,
The
it looks like.
100-mile does go on 113.
on 113.
Takes a left
come-
off the bridge and then a right onto Garden.
Then down to Garden, and then it runs
Onto
into the
Rogers and Turkey
64-miler coming out of Georgetown and Byfield.
So I guess that's
this the same-
that's the only one that's sort of a bigger, you know.
Is it the
bigger
same route
issue
you've always
going
run?
on 113.
Pretty much the same route we've always run.
Did you have a comment? Andy?
Well, just that there's a physical overlap with the earlier walk for Williams, but the timing won't overlap.
Okay.
That's what had to get verified.
The 100-miler starts at 7 a.m. in Topsfield. They're probably in this area somewhere between 7:45 and 9.
Oh, so they're going.
They go out towards Haverhill, then
Okay,
back around.
okay. So this is the outward bound direction.
The outward
Okay,
bound.
Okay.
The 64-miler starts at 8 and comes straight up through Georgetown, South Street, Byfield.
Okay.
That's the one I do.
Make a motion to approve?
I'd second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next one, final, people are gonna be in such amazing shape during these. The Alzheimer's Association Ride to End ALS.
LZ.
Is it?
All right, well, I'm Sarah Trimble. I'm the development manager with the Ride to End Alls. This year will be our 24th annual Ride to End Alls, but it'll be our 5th year cycling through your lovely town of West Newbury. So we do start and end on June 6th up at Hampton Beach State Park in Hampton, New Hampshire. We offer 3 different routes, 100 mile, 62 mile, and 30 mile. And the 100-mile route will be cycling through West Newbury. We predict that they will be through West Newbury from about 8:13 a.m. until about 10:06 a.m. It's a fully supported route, so we have support and gear vehicles riding alongside of the riders. And for the 100-mile riders, we're expecting about 75 riders, but it's not a timed event, so they won't be racing through your streets. We don't have any pit stops or anything, so it'll just be.
So the map is kind of small, and
Yeah.
I just wanted to know if it's going on 113, because as our school people here will know, that day is high school graduation.
Okay.
So.
There are cue sheets following the map. I don't know if they.
I actually didn't put those in the packet. They put in a turn by turn.
So is it going on?
It does go on 113. Yes.
Where and when?
So it goes on 113 at 8:22 a.m. and we predict that the last rider will be through at about 9:44
Do
a.m.
you know whereabouts on
Where?
113?
Oh, so they turn right onto Coffin Street, and then they turn left onto 113, and then they turn right onto Chase Street.
So they come across Rocks Village Bridge then? They do River Road? Is
Yeah,
that-
they must come across
They must do
Rockfield
River
Bridge,
Road.
and go up River
I can
Road,
give
and
you
then
the
take a right on Coffin.
I couldn't
Oh,
tell
this says,
if
you
it
said that has
keeps
the turn
going.
by turn. But sounds like you must cross Rock Village Bridge and then,
They turn left on the river.
What-
That's
what-
what it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
What
okay.
time is graduation? 10.
Yeah, but they're coming across Rocks Village Bridge and just taking a left onto River Road. They're out of everybody's
I,
problem.
yeah, that didn't know. You
Then-
can't tell.
Then
So,
right
and
onto Chase,
graduation
right onto Middle.
starts at 10,
left onto
so-
Indian Hill, left onto South, continue onto Scotland Road, and then they go into Parker Street, then they're into Newbury.
Yeah, so
Continue
they
on
should be
So they're in
done,
a different
by-
direction, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, the other side of town, it sounds like they'll be wrapped up pretty much by the time, people will be driving to graduation, but there won't be a crowd leaving. If the graduation is at 10, what time do you start again?
So we leave Hampton at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
We're predicting to be through with West Newbury at 10:06 a.m.
Yeah,
But that's if someone's cycling at about 10 miles per hour.
right.
And this is pretty early in the race. And these are people that are cycling 100 miles, so they should be cycling on average 15 miles an hour, so they should be through a little bit quicker. That's just the safety net of 10:06.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Actually, if I can get that color back from you, because that's the one I get. Got it.
Next item is the Untitled budget. Gentlemen? Great socks there.
Oh, thank you.
I thought
But you might appreciate those.
Don't do that. Encourage him.
So
You only see 'em once a
Justin
year.
Bartholomew, Superintendent, and
Greg LeBrecq, Business Manager. Thank you for having us again this year. Our annual event. The budget. was
We won't
submitted-
say welcome until we see the numbers.
Which ones?
Exactly.
The budget was submitted to the school committee on January 21st. It was dropped off on the towns the very next day for your review, and so far I've gotten a grand total of no questions from anybody who wasn't on the school committee. So, we're here to basically tell you where we are with this at this point. Since we dropped this off, we've seen the governor's budget as much as you all have. Lots of changes based upon his numbers, both cost and revenue. Surprisingly, it all kind of netted out nice. Not that it didn't hurt us, but it didn't help us much either. So, based upon what I normally do, which is,
Can you do me a favor and put that bring it closer, because I know you think you talk loud, but it's just people might want to hear you at home. Thank you.
based upon our normal projections when we begin, we assume that the towns collectively, before the assessment methodology is done, all right, we can increase their assessment in total about 3%. Once the governor's budget comes out, we can look and see where we are, and more importantly, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education gets involved with the net minimum spending formula we all have become so familiar with since 2006. And big shifts. Early on, it shifted a lot towards West Newbury. Lately, not so much. This year, hardly at all. So what we'll be doing now is going to the school committee after we have the public hearing on the 25th and giving them their options. The budget book as presented to you, using the assumptions I made at the time, indicated a shortfall of about $618,000 over what we would normally ask for. And as I'm sure everybody in the room knows and has heard and has seen, it can be almost entirely attributed to out-of-district special education, tuition, and transportation. Actually, more than that number is attributable to it.
How much has that line item changed?
so just last week on Monday, or Tuesday, I had a meeting with our special education director. And we had two unexpected costs that will be an additional $225,000.
On top of the 600 or?
That's how much we're gonna have to come up with. Yeah. And these are, so one of the challenges is you never know.
No, in other words,
Yeah.
was that?
It was not included in that
that
budget
area
number.
of the- Oh, that's not included in this?
No.
Okay.
We anticipated an additional approximately $700,000 in those two areas when this was originally printed. Since then,
Yeah.
as he said, another 220,000 showed up, and
And it's
Fortunately, he was on vacation today, he didn't learn that, actually, that went up again today.
great. So this is one of the challenges that we've been facing, and you know, like I think I've mentioned to all of you before that the North Shore superintendents have been on top of this, trying to work with our legislators on this. We have these numbers. I already have meetings scheduled, again, to meet with the senators individually.
Just as a general
Yep.
question, so when you talk to other superintendents, is every district getting hammered this way, or is it
Yep.
specific ones?
So if you look at the North Shore, is definitely getting hit hard, and it's different. We're a regional school district. For a regional school district, it's even a little more challenging because you don't have the option of saying, we're not going to pave this road. Instead, we have to cover this cost. For regional school district, our option is to come back to the town and say, listen, we're going in the hole. Fortunately, Mr. LeBrec's been very good at finding ways to make sure we don't have to come to the towns, that we have money in reserves that we can use to cover the cost. The state does reimburse, so the North Shore, the South Shore, and the western part of the state are all getting similarly hit. The Student Opportunity Act, which we read about in the papers, is supposed to provide that $1.5 billion over 7 years. That included some stipulations about increasing circuit breaker to 75%. If they fully fund circuit breaker, that'd be wonderful. It's not happened in the last 10 or 15 years. It's happened once. But the other part that would be really helpful is that they would start to cover 25% of out-of-district special education transportation. Right now, for us, that's just under $1 million is what we spend on that out of our budget. So 25% would be huge, and then it's scheduled that next year's 50, then 75, then 100. But all that's subject to appropriation, and I'm sure you've read the papers and heard me say this time and time again, but since I'm here, I'll say it another time. We do not feel super confident that that will happen. They're going to pay out all the circuit breaker first to make sure they hit 75%, and then anything that's left over, they'll apply towards that out-of-district transportation. So the quick answer is yes.
Does it make any difference? I mean, in other words, if you're getting reimbursed for one part of it versus getting the reimbursement for the transportation part, which is better? It seems like it's a wash.
So it depends.
We want them both.
Yeah,
We want them both, but
we want them both.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
So
If
if
you're gonna take from one to get to the other, it doesn't really matter.
yeah, each situation's unique. If you have a student who's out of district in one of our collaboratives, that's about $70,000, and we get about $16,000 back for that. But there's transportation of about $40,000 that gets attached to that. Of course, we have multiple students, so not each student's $40,000. We have other students who cost us about $350,000. So the circuit breaker there is worth more than the transportation cost.
Yeah, they treat it on an individual person basis, not as a group.
Oh, it's not a lump sum thing. Oh,
No.
I get you, okay.
You
So,
have to fill out a form and apply for this student by student.
I understand these are preliminary numbers, but the numbers that you just gave us, that looks like we're gonna need an override. I'm not even a budget person, but I know it's preliminary and somebody hasn't even started sharpening the pencils. So when we do start sharpening the pencils, what are we looking at that we put, out of this particular proposed budget that we might not be
Yeah,
seeing
so-
any longer?
So I'll go first, and I'm going to let.
You understand?
Right, yeah.
Everything with those numbers, we're gonna need an override. So I understand it's only a proposed budget, and the school committee have made comments, but they haven't voted on it, so it could change 1,000 different times. But I'm curious if, what's gonna be cut out of this proposed budget to get it, if that's even the case.
I'll let Greg go over the numbers, but I'll just say very plainly, we're not an extravagant district. We don't have a lot of extras. So there's not, when you're staring down the 600,000 plus, even just at that number, there's some adjustments we're gonna have to make. And I think the school committee does not have an appetite for an override request. We don't have an appetite for it either. And I don't think the towns do, especially after approving the building project, which is tremendous. So for us, sharpening the pencils, yes, we know that's what our process is. But what's going to happen? This is just for this fiscal year. So when we forecast down the road, it's not just this problem either has to be corrected at the state level, or there's going to be significant issues, not just at Pentucket, but all those communities, North Shore, South Shore, and the western part of the state are going to have some real problems with special education costs being so large that class sizes, I mean, you can cut just about everything to minimize the impact on the children, but sooner or later, personnel are going to end up getting cut. So,
And that's a good comment that you made, by the way, but as Angus, I'm sure will attest to, he thought this was kind of odd the first time he did it. We very much treat this as a partnership with the towns, and pretty much within a week of the governor's budget coming out, I invite your town manager and the other finance directors over, and we go through all the numbers, and I show them basically what their assessments would look like, and then we just start talking about it. This is how bad it's gonna be. What can you afford? And what we try to do is get to a point that nobody needs an override. Under the law, obviously, the 2 out of 3 provision of it, but that always leaves bad feelings, and sometimes the town can get really hurt. And we understand that the towns also have limitations on what they can do.
We can appreciate that.
So we
That
sat down and came up with it, and we'll be going after the public hearing to the school committee and showing them some basic premises of what the assessment to the towns would look like if we left the budget book as intact, knowing full well that it's even short a little bit now because of special ed. If we had to cut $618,000, which would bring us into line where nobody would need an override, although the assessment increases from different towns will be fairly unbalanced this year, and really unbalanced.
That's because of the state. That
That's
has
because of the
nothing to
state
do with-
two-step. No.
People need to know
No,
that.
no.
That has
No, it has
that
nothing to do. I mean,
goofy formula
Yeah.
that it's been unbalanced, and you can't get there from here.
yeah, so I think it's important just for the listeners to understand, that's a great point. Even if West Newbury wanted to put more money in, they can't. And you would send the other 2 towns into an immediate override.
Yeah, it's a hard thing because it's kind of like the Richter scale every year. We were always used to that nice, smooth, because the student population doesn't change very much between the towns. So it always kind of worked out that, every town could afford about 2 to 250, and the district got about 750. Under this methodology, the district never gets that kind of money anymore, because one town will be very high, one town will be in the middle, and one town will be low. And if you want to not have an override, you have to kind of go to the least common denominator. That takes money out of the school system. That's why, if you look at the budget books over the last 3 years, the percentage of money that the towns give to the schools out of their budget has started to decrease, 2, 3, 4%, and the other 2 towns, not as much. Yours stays about 50-50. But as it drops, that's why. It's because of that 2-step formula, and there's nothing we can do about it. We can't go back. It's too late.
So we could all get a nice budget, and the variable in the room would be that you vote it, goes to the towns, we fund it, and then we get another special ed cost that was unforeseen.
And we
even
will.
After, how, it's,
there is a fund called Circuit Breaker. You're allowed, and I keep that as a balancing account. I try to keep about 600,000 into it, and believe me, some years that's not enough. But it gets close enough to it, we can do it. Because the last thing you want to do is, once the schedules are made for all the students and things, and you have so many history teachers, so many English teachers,
Correct.
it's very tough. You can't pull people out at that point.
So you don't spend that down to 0 in June 30th? Yeah.
No. We're allowed to carry that one over. We're allowed to keep as much in there.
You can carry it over.
Yeah, we're allowed to keep, it's kind of like your
Yeah, it's
stabilization
like a
fund.
stabilization fund.
We're allowed to keep as much in there as you got in the prior year. And we usually pull about 1.1 to 1.2 million out of the state circuit breaker fund. And for a district this size, that's an amazingly large amount. We pull more out than districts 3 times our size.
So I think, so another, just number-wise, so special education, it's a big number, because special education was, this past fiscal year 20, was 30% of our budget, and the proposed budget is special education ends up being 34% of our budget because of these changes. So, and we've been to so many meetings over the last year about this, and it doesn't matter if you talk to mayors in the North Shore.
you had one like what is it now? Like last spring or whatever?
Yeah,
over at
we had
Dyton
several.
No, Masconomet, wasn't there a big meeting about this? And
Yep, we met in Salisbury, a couple times in Salisbury. Yep, and we met at the police department there, the library, just with senators and state reps, just explaining it, and everyone sees the writing on the wall. The problem is we, in the state, don't have votes. We just don't have the population to have the votes.
Angus, what would be, ignoring the capital changes, and obviously that's a different, it's hard to compare year to year, but, so what would our, FY '20 operating assessment be versus the proposed one here? What would be the difference?
The proposal on the table is about 2.4%. The issue, as Greg alluded to, is with this two-step method, it would fall more heavily on the other two towns. So it's actually
No, but I'm just talking about West Newbury. So
2.4%
Over last year.
from this current year to next year for operating. Obviously, that leaves aside the capital, surcharge for the middle high school.
But that's not gonna be the number.
No, that'd be the worst-case scenario.
So we're not looking at an override.
Correct.
Wait.
You keep talking about that. You kept mentioning it, but
Whoa. Because because with those numbers, there would have to be an override in some of the other towns, so.
But we're not talking about, we're talking about West Newbury.
Well, I think he
Well, we
also
haven't
said
talked
if we
about
put all the new special ed costs in there, it may drive you that way. Yeah, it may have, it's
Oh,
come so much.
Yeah, I understand that, but you gotta talk about that.
Just so that people know what.
It's not,
Yeah.
I because of the two-step method, and the way this thing goes up and down, and years ago, we took the brunt of it, and the other towns didn't. I think everybody's gonna be very happy with what we're going to be allocated for our costs this year because of things.
That's what I wanted to get across, so that people don't
Yeah,
think we're
but,
talking.
yeah, but this, I have a feeling these numbers, when it goes to the school committee, these numbers are gonna go down significantly.
Yeah, 2.4% being your worst-case scenario
Yeah.
is very,
That's the
very
worst.
nice.
So
I know,
it could be
I know.
better.
We are.
Yeah. Like I said, again, that's the school committee's choice. We'll give them their options. I'll show them the
course.
numbers. I would rather not say them now
No.
because it
He's
gets
got,
people's
he's
hopes
got
up or
different
not.
options that he's gonna present, like, hey,
There
hey,
are,
this is $30,000, do you want the leather seats?
Yeah.
There's $20,000, you can get it with cloth. In air conditioning, there's, $15,000 without the air conditioning, it's gonna go right down the list.
So that 2.4% though represents that $660,000 hole plus whatever else.
no, at
No.
2.4% to you, I'd be balanced.
I see.
The other two towns would be in override mode.
Okay.
But, I mean, you said it'd be an affordable number for you, I'm assuming, and the other two towns would have to go to an override. But again, that'd be and how much that override is their choice.
Can I ask you a question? When the other two towns need an override, do they still need our vote, because of the regional agreement to have their town? They only need their own override, right?
And if they don't do the override, then they have to find the money somehow in their what they do.
Correct.
No, if both of them fail it, I've only got one town then, and I have to cut down to whatever the number is after their override vote. And again, they can put any number on that they wish, as long as it's $1 more than they paid last year. So,
If two people said yes, because we're not voting for it, then the other one has to cut to meet the other two people, because
Right.
then that's mandated through the original agreement.
yeah, it's 2 out of 3 approval
But
method.
what if it's like this, what we're talking about right now, what if it's 1 and 1 and we're just bystanders, what happens?
Well, no, you wouldn't be a bystander. You'll still vote, you're voting the budget at your town meeting. Just because you don't ask for an override, you're,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha, okay.
your vote is exactly counts, yeah.
It's the same, but okay.
I'd be remiss, though, in not pointing out that there is not just bad news in here. There's some new initiatives coming out, and I'll let,
Sure.
he likes to talk to.
That's not true.
And you don't.
So, yeah,
too.
so the two initiatives that are in there, and this seems crazy, but they'll make sense. The first is we put in there to have full-day kindergarten, free full-day kindergarten. Right now, Students are half-day, if they want to go to full day, they can certainly do that, but they have to pay. To me, that's always an issue of access. If I can't afford it, I don't get it. We do have, the parents have the ability, if they can't afford it, they can come to us and they can sign a waiver, but I know that that is just not a real situation in our communities, that people who can't afford it would just willingly come to the principal or to the business manager to ask for that waiver. So the full-day kindergarten, it's a one-time cost that we end up getting reimbursed by the state at the end of the fiscal year. So once it's in place. The second is we're going to go one-to-one Chromebooks, grades 7 through 12. In the elementary schools right now, they all have Chromebooks, I think, grades 4, 5, and 6. They have them, and then they have some carts for the other grade levels. What's amazing is when 6th grade's done, the PTOs and PTAs have been funding those at the elementary level. We are, Mr. Buck, who's our technology director, he's done presentations and just pointed out how far behind Pentucket is with technology, and that should not be, if you've walked around or talked to kids, it's not a shock. We are extremely far behind. But our intent is to go ahead and take all the Chromebooks we have in the middle school and the high school, give those to the high school students, grades 9 through 12, and purchase new Chromebooks for all 7th and 8th graders. They will keep those Chromebooks throughout their entire middle school and high school career. And when they're done with them, we don't need them. The technology at that point will be out of date, and the value of them will be negligible. So what's nice about it is last summer, we gave all teachers Chromebooks so that they could use it to become familiar with how to utilize them. Right now, we have students who come in, they're using their phones, some are using Macs, some are using PCs, some are using Chromebooks. So if a teacher is using a PC and they have a certain type of shockwave or something like that, well, you don't have that on a Mac. So the students aren't all able to access the same curriculum. So we go back to that whole issue about access, some people being able to have it and some people not. So those are the two big initiatives. We had proposed a third one, on increasing the student fees, but the school committee was not keen on that. Yes. Because we were going to eliminate student fees, the school committee was not keen on that, especially given the fact that when you compare our fees already, they're about half of what any other school districts are. And when you consider students who are playing travel ball and things like that outside of the school, they're paying about 5 times what they're paying to pay for Pentucket. So we're going to keep those in. So it's just those two initiatives that we're looking at for next year.
Great. Thank you for coming in.
Have you ever thought about can you set up a gift fund for the Chromebooks?
Of course we have. So we're in the process of not just we're trying to get grants as well.
Yeah.
So it's part of it, there's a separate entity outside of the school district that might be interested in raising those funds and donating them, which would be great. And it's a one-time, so the cost after this year will just be annual cost of about $48,000.
Yeah, it's like
It depends on-
95 the first year and 45 in subsequent years, because it'll only be given to the
7th grade, right? We're gonna have to do 2. So yeah, we're seeking grants right now. We have a grant writer that we have employed on a $1 contract to go
Good
and
deal.
yes, it is to go out and try and get us as many grants as possible related to technology. And we think, well, we should have some success. We've got a pretty decent relationship with Dell, so we're hoping that number will drive down a bit.
Okay, thanks about that. Now we want to get down to the brass tacks, I guess, talk about the funding the inspectional services for the.
Sure.
For the high
And the
school.
SO.
And afterwards. So, Angus, do you want to just tell us, so where do we stand now?
Yeah, so at this point, we have a form of agreement that's in front of you in your packet tonight on the inspection and permitting for the middle high school, which is in a form and substance agreed to by the district and represents the last draft that came into the board work session. So I believe is with your vote tonight would be the final document. It basically provides for the district to pay the direct expenses associated with the permitting of the project, specifically the third-party review of the building permits, and any incremental costs the town may experience over the life of the project related to inspections that take place above what's within the operating budget, which the latter piece we expect to be a modest thing, but everyone understands that we only budget for 13 hours a week for part-time inspectors, so to the extent there's more time than that needed, we don't have an appropriation to cover that. So this would also cover any of those expenses. In exchange,
So how, I guess that was one of the things I was gonna ask, so how would that, what would be the dynamics of not the outside inspectors, but say the electrical inspector needed to do 20 hours 1 week. So what would be the dynamics
what
of
we've
that?
talked about at the staff level, and Stephanie's here, she's been part of this, so if I get it wrong, but what we've talked about is that there'd be 2 separate timesheets, with kind of the base time is the budgeted time that's within the operating budget, and then time above that would be a separate timesheet, so it could be presented to the district as essentially a separate invoice at that person's rate of pay. And so that would not apply for the building inspector, since that's a salaried position. That person gets paid the same amount. If they work extra hours, that's part of being salaried. So we're really just talking about the 2 part-time inspectors.
Okay.
And where it's a controlled construction project with a lot of eyes on it, and outside project manager and so forth, we think that that's, we don't know how often that will arise, but if let's say all of the plumbing is coming online in a short amount of time and we've got to get our inspectors there to sign off on things, then that's something we want to be able to provide that responsiveness when the time comes.
Did they know about it? Did they know that
Yes.
eventuality could happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and as part of the terms of the MOU that's before you, this would also have the town waiving the building permit fees, which would normally, for a project of this size, be quite substantial.
Like $1 million.
A couple of $1 million, or more than $2 million.
Okay.
So just for the sake of anybody who might be watching this at home or later, the evolution of the agreement where where the school district will be invoiced directly, I think originally the town was going to be invoiced, and we were looking for essentially for upfront funding from the school district, which you weren't able to do because your agreement through through Mass School Building Administration or Association or whatever it is, doesn't allow you to do that. You can only pay for services that have already, or you can only put money out for services that have already been rendered.
Well,
Or-
we can do whatever we want, they just won't reimburse us.
Oh,
for those.
okay,
I want
okay,
reimbursement.
right, and you want reimbursement, right,
we want
okay,
it.
so,
We
all right,
need the
yeah,
money.
all right. So that, yes, thanks for finishing.
I want them to pay the 54%.
Right, yeah, thanks for finishing the sentence. So just so people understand how this has evolved. That-
Do you mind going
okay.
back on that budget? We're talking about the SRO. Did you want to talk about that?
Well, let's finish this.
Yeah. Do we need to sign that tonight, or we need to vote on it? What are we doing?
The way it's drafted is, it provides for me to sign upon authorization by the board, so if you guys were to vote to endorse it, then we would make note of that vote, and I would sign.
So moved to endorse it.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that should be cleared. Perhaps a second motion would be, it says right in it, that's the waiver of fees, but just so everyone's clear that vote also has the effect of formally waiving the building permit fees.
Correct.
Okay. So briefly now, I guess we wanted to talk about, while you guys were here, the sort of formalizing our relationship on the school resource officer. So Angus, again, you want to?
Yeah, we've had continued progress on that issue. We had a form of agreement that was substantially agreed right around the end of last calendar year. And then, there was just one sticking point, which was provided for an annual increase of 2.5% or the COLA agreed in the union contract, and the district raised the concern both that obviously they're not a party to the union contract, but also you never know what's going to happen in future budget years. So the idea of years 2 and 3, the agreement being subject to appropriation, well, obviously that raised concerns on the town side because it basically, calls into question whether the funds will be there. So what I had suggested to the superintendent, and I think he and I feel is reasonable, is to shorten the duration of the agreement to just encompass FY21 with the funding contribution that's been put on the table there, and that would then be part of our annual budgeting process, just as we do now with Salisbury with the harbor master, with Newburyport with the animal control. It would just be an annual renewal of the SRO agreement. So that's not before you formally tonight. I just sent an updated draft earlier today, so that, but if that sounds okay in concept, we would bring that forward for the next meeting for the board to vote.
Sounds good. Did that work better for you
Yeah,
guys?
it's worked out well.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good night.
So how's it, what's happening with the
The project, yeah, so it'd be the end of March, somewhere in April is when the, will
Groundbreaking.
start.
So, I guess I mentioned this to Angus, but, at some point, we're going to have a meeting so that neighbors can know what's happening around
March.
there.
March.
Yeah, so I
That
believe.
was talked at our last meeting.
Is that much for you?
They hadn't picked it, you guys hadn't picked a date, or somebody didn't pick a date at our last meeting, but there was a date going to be.
Yeah.
It's going to be sometime in March.
Yeah, I think Vertex has been reaching out to the abutters just to keep them informed. I know right now, the abutters have been receiving notifications about if they want to have their property, are they videotaped? I know pictures.
It's surveyed. I guess
Inspected.
surveyed and inspected.
Surveyed, which property owners can have the rights to do whatever they'd like to do. I think it's,
I actually read some, I don't think it was in the Wall Street Journal recently, about some people that, it was actually a big municipal project, and they were doing site work and like several houses, because they
That's right.
hadn't been surveyed. So
Right.
it seems like something people should do.
yeah, so absolutely, it's no cost to the people, no cost to the abutters, there's privacy. So if I'm a homeowner, I have maybe some privacy concerns. But we don't keep the pictures, we don't keep the videos,
That was
that all
brought
gets
up-
kept by a third party.
That was brought up to me by some residents, like, what are they?
The privacy part?
Yeah,
Really?
and, whatever, everybody gets nervous. So I had brought it up to our, 2 meetings ago, not this particular meeting. So when they sent the letter out to the residents, they specifically said that these will not be shared with anybody unless that you put a claim in and say, then we have to show it to you, we'll show it to the insurance company of before and after and stuff like that, but these get locked away.
You can't say, that's the worst wallpaper.
Or,
No.
or you didn't tell the assessor that you did your kitchen over, and I think that's what. I think.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, they're not in, right, they're
Yeah,
not in
but
that
that's-
business at all.
That's what came to my mind. They never said that to me, but I'm saying, oh, your house, you've been assessed that you haven't touched this since the 70s, but it looks.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, you're right, in the building committee meeting that was voted upon, we thought it was a smart move, because it helps protect all the abutters, their asset of their home.
But in both directions.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
can't say claim damage that was already there.
That's right.
Crack that's been there since the 60s when the foundation.
And apparently, they actually have, they have forensic folks, scientists that go in and they can tell you how old that crack is and things like
That
that.
just happened. No,
Yeah,
sorry.
all right, so,
All the stuff you've learned.
it's way too much. I've learned way too much useless information. Useful right now, but,
Okay, we have an appointment for our Memorial Day parade, and I want to make sure he stays around.
yeah.
Go
Go ahead, have at it. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
I think he was here longer than he thought he wanted to be.
the number one priority. Yeah.
Hi. How are you?
How are you?
Fine, how are you, sir?
Doing well, welcome. So you saw it in the newspaper and you thought you could lend a hand. Is that basically how it was that we get started?
It's the long and short of it, yeah.
That's great.
So.
Sorry, I was just trying to find
you
his,
know, the background of why we wanna do this, or?
Yes, Angus and I spoke sometime last week.
Can you
about-
talk right into the
Yeah,
microphone,
sorry.
sir?
Yes, Angus and I spoke sometime, I think on last Thursday, kind of about what happened last year and what the town's goals and needs were for this role.
So basically, this person is just going to manage our policy, right?
I guess.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
that's a
let's
good
just-
way to put it, yeah.
That's right, yeah, we spent some time on the phone. You know, I said this would be the first year through. I talked through over the last several years, the number of changes that have happened in terms of how the parade is organized. It's gotten a bit more formal, I think, each year, partly because different people have been in charge of running it. Actually, I mean, not that long ago, the town really didn't have much role at all. Is that
Correct.
And then over time, it became a town thing, and then you know, obviously with me being new, I brought a different approach to it than you know, my predecessors and so forth. So you know, so for instance, last year in some ways was more formal in the run up and documenting who was there, where they line up, and some of that stuff than had happened previously. And I think this is part of that evolution. So you know, I talked with is it Ilya?
Yes.
About
Can you say that one more time?
Ilya?
Ilya?
Yes, sir.
that the you know, that the role in terms of the run up to the parade, that my office working with Teresa, the Council on Aging, would continue to be the kind of lead workers in terms of outreach to prospective participants. You know, pinning down, you know, confirming people participation, floats, number of people, that kind of logistics, but that you know, to whomever is appointed in this role, that we would be totally open as much as they want to know about that is great. And certainly as we get, you know, in the weeks leading up, so we have some better, you know, the information that we need to know specifically what they'll have in the parade. Understanding, as I've told this board, and as I talked with Ilya on the phone last week, you know, sometimes when you're dealing with floats, we understand people aren't building the floats till the weekend before the parade. So from where I sit, I'm not gonna ask people to provide photos of their floats, because they may not exist. So there's some reasonableness, but I think where this will be the first year through, we'll see how it goes. But then on the day of, that's where, you know, there's judgment calls if those need to be made. You know, I explained the objectives of having a policy that established kind of an independent arbiter, if you will, to make those judgments based on the guidelines set out in the policy.
Were you here, like, how long have you lived in town?
Middle of August. So no, the answer is no. I moved here
Oh,
middle
got
of
it.
summer.
Got it.
Thanks for standing
Yeah.
up and offering to do this.
Sure.
It's great.
Do you have any questions of us? How do you see, I mean, reading it and talking to Angus, how do you see your role?
I mean, I'm hoping it's fairly non-confrontational, not a tremendous amount of.
Benign?
I mean, I'm just hoping that people kind of read the rules and kind of do the right thing, and that the corrections that need to be made are small. I mean, it's a Memorial Day parade. It should be pretty.
Yeah, I think that,
Yeah.
you know, the policy is more just a preventative at this point. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, we had some stuff happen last year which was unique, as far as I know, to the history of the parade, and rather than leave the opportunity for it to get messier at some point in the future. So hopefully it becomes, hopefully it's almost a non-position.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
hopefully for what creating a policy and stuff will nip any problems in the bud before
Right.
they happen again. What do you think?
Yeah. So do you see his role, now, if there are any questions, so if somebody, hypothetically, this April, somebody wants to do a float, and they go, you know, I'm not sure if this is gonna meet the new policy. Now, would they email this gentleman, and then he would make a determination on it, or how do you see that? Or do we just say, hey, this is the policy, they show up that day, and he goes, nope, sorry, this isn't fit? I mean,
Well,
how,
I mean, we'd like to.
Proactive would be better.
yeah,
we'd like
yes,
to
yeah, I just don't know how much,
Yeah.
I think so too,
Yeah.
but I wanna know how much, you know, do you make that early on, or you say, hey, here's the policy, read it, and then if you have any questions, you need to talk to this gentleman.
I think that's how I would handle it. And,
Do you have a
in fact,
problem with
I
that?
think, you know,
No.
just from a logistical standpoint, since, you know, in the, run-up to last year, you know, we had, I'm trusting my memory here, but, you know, probably between 36 and 40 participants, you know, groups, whatever. And Teresa and I had hundreds of correspondences. So I'm not suggesting that, you know, so I think town office would continue to be the point of contact. I think when if questions come up, or as to whether does this meet it or not, that's when I would send it, rather than just putting them in touch, because I think that could, you know, a lot of the participants, you know, these are volunteer groups that may not meet that often, and, you know, you don't wanna lose information, you know, that we need on kind of logistical stuff. So I think, you know, that's something we would meet early on and kind of scope out,
So,
how it's gonna work best.
and then if we do, this position is the final decision. There
That's
is,
the way it's written.
yeah, and there is no deliberation, on the side of the road where somebody walks over to us, and says, no, I want you guys in, and no, this is final. I think it needs to be that way.
Yes.
There can't be any, you know, whatever, he might wanna
No
seek,
bargaining.
yeah, he might wanna seek us out, or you out, or maybe, I don't know, and say,
No, like, you
There-
know, jumping over his head to somebody.
yeah, there isn't any, somebody lobbying us to try to get something in that's not,
That's the
he-
whole point.
exactly.
Yeah, and as much as we can.
I just wanted that
No, I
said.
agree with
No,
you.
and I
know what
appreciate
mean?
that. I
No,
mean,
I wanted that said out
Yeah.
in public that, you know, people,
You have absolute power.
thank you. Thank-
we give you a special hat that goes
No,
along
that's
with that
good.
power,
I was
but.
hoping for a sash, but I'll settle for a hat. I mean, look, I'm hoping that there's no issues, and, you know, if people are willing to reach out earlier, we'll work and remediate whatever kind of defect there is in what they're trying to accomplish in their float or car. I mean, like, the whole point's not to ban people, the whole point is to get them involved. It's just, the rules are what they are, so let's just cure whatever, you know, issue there
No,
is.
it's a good way to, you know, influence people, telling them, you know, you moved into town, and if you want to be the fence viewer, too, that's always a good one, telling people that, you know, they have to take down the fence. No, I'm just being facetious. So,
And I am literally new to the town, so I know nobody, so I'm as conflict-free as they come, so.
yeah, there you go. I'd like to make a motion, but, and this is no disrespect, but I'm going to butcher your name.
I'll make a motion.
So if you want, how do you pronounce your last name now?
Zaitsev.
Zaitsev. Yeah, I'll-
Zaitsev.
I make a motion to appoint Ilya Zaitsev as the Memorial Day Parade arbiter. Chairperson, okay, chairperson, sorry. I was looking at the subject here.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, we always put an ending thing on this
Yeah,
until
yeah.
January 15th. It's
Yes.
just a one-year appointment. If you want to do it again, you
Yeah, yeah,
can. I
that's
mean,
fine, yeah.
but all appointments actually.
Well, it could be till June 15th, or till July 15th.
No,
A lot
it's
of other
June
appointments.
15th.
June 15th, yeah, till June
I'm-
15th,
I'm-
yeah, it'll work fine, because
I'm okay with it not being a lifetime appointment.
At this point.
Yeah.
See
if
how
you
it
do a real
goes.
good job, you never know what might happen.
You understand there's no, I mean, it's not paying, you don't get a state
I am-
pension.
Yeah, it's
I
fine.
just want to make sure.
My wife is a state employee, one's enough for the family, we're good.
Okay. Okay.
Further discussion, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Could I just ask how many people applied for the position?
Just one.
And could I have a spelling of your name, please?
Yeah, I'll come right over.
Thank you.
So we'll be in touch with you. by,
Thanks.
Great, yeah, thanks, Elliot.
Brian and so forth. So, thank you very much.
I can give you his email, Jen, if you want.
Our next item is an updated, cost proposal for the, paid school playground improvements, a CPC, item. report goes to them. Angus, you wanna give it, you know the details on what the revisions here.
Yep, so the, as I think the board's aware, the CPC took up its initial request at its January 16th meeting, and, trying to read the room, I do think it appears to be there's a lot of support for the proposal. There was definitely a sentiment to, see if we could get it done for less cost. It says what, 7-member committee, actually, I think at least 1 member, maybe 2 were absent for the discussion. So I don't know how it will play out, but I did want to be responsive to the comments made at the CPC meeting, which included looking at whether we could do something great for less, because part of the sentiment that came through was, we don't want to do something inferior. The idea was, could we do it in a smaller footprint, or look at different changes that would still have a high quality end result, but be more economical. So we have been working with the designer, and we were able to trim off just short of $100,000. It's still a costly proposal. It still carries about $85,000 for the site work, that includes the designs, survey, engineering. We have confirmed that we would need site plan review for this, which I will tell you.
When I saw that, I was like, why?
It caught me by surprise, but a strict reading of the bylaw supports that position, and Leah did review that with the planning board, and so that is part of what, we tie ourselves in that.
But it's like, we're not making a new playground, it's the same playground.
I know, I've worked in a lot of towns. I was a zoning consultant for most of my career. I'm kind of flabbergasted, but that is a strict reading of the bylaw. That's how it's written. I'm sure it was written that way with intent.
Yep.
It's very specific that it says even if you don't need a building permit, you need site plan review. So it's something I think we ought to look at. But anyhow,
I saw that and like, oh, you gotta be kidding.
yeah. So that's part of what drives the need for an engineer and so forth. So that's what we have. The major change in terms of substance is reducing the footprint because the initial conceptual design had included a swing set along the back. Obviously, we have an existing swing set, so we're able to kind of reduce the square footage of that poured-in-place surface by about 20 to 25%, which is a significant reduction, because that's a major cost. One thing that I speak to in the cover letter, but I didn't include in the proposal, we did look at another potential change, which would be to incorporate, instead of 100% poured in place, which is what the proposal is, to do a combination of poured in place with bark mulch, which would save some money, about $31,000, because we had the designer actually cost that out and give us a separate proposal. I didn't include that. It's something if depending on what amount of funding, if funding is appropriated and at what level, we'll do the best we can, and we'll do the best we can. But that is a change that, speaking for myself, for Wayne, for Greg Hatton with the Pawtucket, and the product manufacturers, they all recommended that would, significantly compromise especially the long-term durability of the playground. So we feel, universally, we feel that 100% poured-in-place surface is a higher quality end product.
Maybe I forget. Did we address Rick's question before? Like, how long does this stuff take to cure? And is it leaching, volatile, organic compounds? It's a foot thick of material. That's a lot. I mean, like, what do we know about this stuff?
I do not know.
I had some limited conversation with somebody at the MMA meeting.
Really?
Yeah, so O'Brien and Sons had a booth there, so I stopped and talked for 15, 20 minutes with somebody who was there, who wasn't specifically familiar with the project that had been proposed for West Newbury, but was somewhat familiar with the product, the poured-in-place material. He actually suggested, and this is something I just haven't done, because I haven't had the time, but he thinks that there's probably information, sort of the modern day, today's equivalent of what used to be called an MSDS, material safety data sheet. I don't recall what it's called now, but.
SDS.
An SDS, okay. So there's,
The world
there should be information online on the port in place, the Surface America, on their website, background information on the material and things like cure time and volatility and leaching, because what I didn't realize is it's actually porous material. It's basically it's basically a pulverized rubber or granulated rubber largely from I think waste tires, and then they mix a binder with it and remains as a porous material. So one of the current concerns are not just what's coming out of it going into the air, but also what might leach through it into the water table, and how concerned you're going to be about that. Everybody's going to have their own take on it, but bottom line is it's worth us taking a little bit of time to look into that, and I haven't done it up to this point.
So I was wrong, I didn't really, it's not a foot thick, it's 4 inches thick, so.
Yeah, but it's still it's actually 4 at the thinnest. I think it's thicker in places.
Is that the same stuff they use at the track or similar or
No.
whatever?
It's probably analogous, but it's not.
It was heated up. I remember when they put the track down, it was like, it kind of looked like the thing that ties roads. They have a big thing and they pour these rubber.
He's a
materials
track
on it,
that's
and it
nice and
spreads it
soft.
out, and it cools and.
Yeah. Yeah,
The
my guess is probably a different material because it can't flow too much because they're putting it on, it's not a level surface, it's an inclined surface, whereas in a track there's very slight grade, so water drains off it, but not much, but it has to be pretty viscous,
Who maintains it after it's built? Us or the district?
We do, and somebody has to be trained for that, right? Isn't there a?
Well, the maintenance would be to the district, any capital improvement would be with the town.
Yeah, I think there was actually a provision in here.
Things that you need to do in terms of maintaining it, based on the product specifications, that you don't void the warranty, like you can't use a metal shovel to clear snow in the winter. Those kinds of things that would compromise the service.
Yeah, it isn't like,
Well, we're not
you don't have to take a graduate level course or anything, it's just understanding what not to do.
They did this the same vendor, the same port in place, and they did actually a combination of port in place with bark mulch at the Pines over in Groveland. So the next time you drive by,
All right.
We should stop by.
They just put a new playground there.
That's right, I'll meet you at the playground.
Okay. I get the slide first.
Yeah, and they're currently proposing.
Is there a weight limit?
CPC in Groveland, a new playground for the Bagnell School. Is that? That's correct. Yeah. So that's.
I say no to the bark
Near the
mulch.
playground.
I say no to the bark mulch. But
Yeah.
that's just me. That's one thing when my wife looked at it, she says, I hope you're not gonna have to put that blankety blank bark mulch like they did up at Action Cove. If you're gonna spend some money, do it right.
Yeah, well, it does just move around, it gets messy, it moves around, and when it rains hard, makes everything else a mess.
Yeah.
I was curious about the existing swing set, what's gonna happen to that? I know that I think Ray Cook brought that up at the CPC meeting,
So we've actually on a kind of a parallel track, we've got O'Brien looking at the $20,000 earmark.
Yeah,
And how far that can take us in terms of, we know it can get us access to the swing set, and we know it can get a couple of new swings in 2 of the bays, but can it also rebuild some or all of that swing set? So we've actually got them working on that actively.
yeah, so we could actually, in that case, we already have the hardware, so we might get more value for the money by using, if it's still reusable, if it still meets whatever codes there are regarding playgrounds, if it still meets those standards, we could really get more bang for the buck, because we already have the hardware. We already have the existing swing set.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got them working on that separately.
Yeah.
Because since we've already got that funding appropriated.
Yeah, great.
And, you know, I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again, especially in light of the discussion tonight, is what we have is in front of you is a conceptual design and a cost estimate for that conceptual design, and that's the basis of the budget proposal. That doesn't mean that's the exact design or even manufacturer or vendor that we would go with. We have been solicited by other installers, and as I know in the CPC proposal, if the funding is appropriated, then we would consider multiple vendors. And so at that point, you know, if there ends up being, I mean, you know, and we would do something substantially similar to what you see, and it could be exactly what you see, but I guess my point is if there end up being reasons why we don't want a particular type of surface, there are other, you know, competing products out there. So we haven't made any commitments to anybody.
Okay. When does this go in front of the CPC?
So they'll take up their continued consideration this Thursday evening, and
Are all the kids gonna be there? That gave us
I'm not sure.
that gave us these drawings that were so heartfelt?
Yeah, no, there was a lot of really great work that the kids did. And,
You see these things?
It's, and
Okay.
we literally have hundreds.
I know.
Hundreds. So I included about a dozen or 15 that, you know, I wanted a couple from each grade, but.
You had the art jurors look it over and. When is the playground at Bagnell, when's that gonna be complete?
So that's all still being discussed.
Okay.
It's the exact same track. They're
Okay,
seeking
okay,
CPC
all right.
funding. So if, yeah, and actually, I think their CPC has already, I'm not sure, I know their selectmen have already referred it.
Yeah,
I don't know if CPC is active, but that would go to their town meeting.
okay,
So if that funding is approved and our funding is approved, they would basically be on the same.
yeah,
track.
yeah,
last week, I think.
Okay.
so I was looking at the schedule and, looked pretty conservative, like I wonder if it's conceivable that it would be done before the beginning of school.
I doubt it. I do think the schedule I put in is conservative. I think it's not gonna take 210 days, but I did want to account for the site plan review.
210
And that hadn't been part of the timeline initially. You know, they did specify in their, you know, in the estimate that the 4 to 6 weeks of ordering and receipt of supplies, obviously removing the existing, that could be concurrent with that. So some of this can overlap.
Well, permitting with, I don't know, site plan review.
Well, and they
That could take-
specified,
that could take,
that they didn't want it to be filed until after funding is approved, which
Yeah.
and I can circle back with the planning board on that. I mean, to me, I would see a rationale to actually get that process done before town meeting, because, you know, what conditions are they possibly going to impose on it? You know, that have any.
It could actually cost more money if those, if hypothetically, it could cost more money
Oh, that's a good point.
with any
Why can't
conditions
we
that
do
they
it ahead of
impose.
time?
Well, that would be my preference, but I'm just, you know, I got guidance back from the chair, and that's what I'm going by, but that doesn't mean I can't go back to them and say, hey, look, can't we get the site plan done ahead of time? Because really the product selection, the actual playground design, that's really not a planning board issue. It doesn't, you know, need a building permit. The building inspector would sign off on it because he's our ADA coordinator, so he'd be finding that it was
ADA compliant?
with ADA, but he came, because I had built him initially to the permitting schedule, and he said, I don't need to issue a building permit. I said, yeah, but I want you to sign off on it, you know, for his ADA compliance. So in terms of site plan review, I can't imagine.
So it would be nice if we could just ask them in a nice, in a friendly way, that, you know, that
It'd be nice to get that done ahead of time.
Exactly.
So that we don't lose 45
valuable
days,
building time.
which
after-
would mean it doesn't come online before the school year, when perhaps otherwise it might have.
Correct.
Yeah.
Can that be, if it does get passed by the CPC, that can be part of a special, right?
Correct, that's what.
So then we can start approving,
Yeah,
we don't have to wait until July 1st.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you guys want to make a motion? Well, so that.
I just wanna know what I mean, I would
So
assume,
basically, so that we're like the sponsoring.
yeah,
thing,
so
that-
like what? So we
so-
approve the
so-
application, or
so
we
that
support the
We
application?
support the application, so it can go to the CPC, yeah.
Yep, so moved. That was moved by me.
Okay, and I'll second that.
Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
I do want to, well, Justin's here, I do want to thank both him and Dustin Gray and Greg Hadden have been terrific. They've been, right at the table with this initiative right from the start, so I want to recognize
We
them.
always appreciate the collaboration. Angus is fabulous, going back and forth. with
Thank you.
Greg. It's very beneficial for us.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
See you guys.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Appreciate you stopping by. Thanks for coming by on your vacation day, I guess you'd say?
Yeah. It's important stuff.
Never ends. How's the basketball team doing?
Girls are rolling. Girls are rolling.
Yep.
Boys struggle a little bit, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, for sure.
Next item is,
FinCom schedule?
Budget.
No, yes?
item F, talking about the forthcoming FY '20 budget and the FinCom's, review schedule.
I do have a updated schedule, passed around 3 copies now. I was able to track down a few more, boards and committees today. There's just 3 now with question marks, and honestly, they could just be scheduled and, later moved around if we need to, but I'd like to get this posted kind of ASAP, so that it's out there to everybody, but, so other than the 3, question marks, those are all confirmed in terms of the dates that those will be reviewed at the FinCom, so I'm, pulling together the last, details so I can get the FinCom what they need to, start the process, Monday.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
CPC, you're just waiting for
Well,
a
you
little
know,
bit,
what I
little
was
bit of
thinking-
feedback.
Here's the
Yeah.
thing with CPC, because none of this is simple. So the 24th was the only date that worked for Vanessa Johnson Hall and John Dodge. And since we know the Artichoke River Woods is going to be considered, so that's kind of locked in for that article review.
Yeah.
But I don't like the idea that if CPC coming out of this Thursday night, if they do recommend the Page School, that there's then such a quick turnaround to get that to FinCom Monday. So there's a scenario where CPC, like the Artichoke River, it happens Monday, and then something else happens, something else. Also, I don't know, the CPC, who do they want to have attend?
Yeah.
And, when are those people free? So that's one that one has been a little tougher to pin down.
Yeah,
So but the 24th, Vanessa will be there to speak to Artichoke River Woods. So I think if nothing else, that will be on for Monday night.
okay.
And then John Dodge is also available.
Okay, next item, G.
Make a motion,
Let's just do it, yeah.
to waive the 15-day notice and confirmation process and to authorize the town manager to appoint the interim staff support to the Community Preservation Committee.
Second. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Rick, do you want to tell us about the next agenda item, Green Communities Grant application.
Sure. So, starting probably 4 years or so ago, there was, when Green Communities grant opportunities came up, and we've had two up to this point, there was some discussion, some consideration of upgrading the controls in this building for the controls in this building, thanks, for the HVAC system, which are currently some kind of archaic pneumatic system. They still work. In fact, they're doing a good job in terms of keeping the building comfortable, but they don't control the building very well from the standpoint of energy efficiency. It's always comfortable because it's always the same temperature all the time, 24/7, 365, year-round, no holidays. It's either warm at what it wants to be warm at, or it's cold at what you want it to be cold at, depending upon the time of the year. And so we had a company that's state approved on the state Green Communities grant listing, come out and look at the building and sort of size things up, and then gave us proposals on upgrading to what's referred to as, these are great acronyms, the HVAC system would have a DDC EMS.
Great.
It's a direct digital control energy management system. Instead of a pneumatic system, it'll be a, sort of modern electronic stuff. And it would just be the control systems, probably all of the mechanical stuff that is already here is fine. It's conceivable there might be a couple of components that would have to be replaced, but most of them should be fine. So what we need to decide is, as a board, is this something that we want to consider for applying for a Green Communities grant for? I spoke with Wayne about it, Wayne Amaral, and Wayne has legitimate concerns, and in his experience with previous municipalities has been that no buildings are truly comfortable. Everybody's always, or somebody's always cold, or somebody's always too hot, or some people are, you could have a combination of people who are too cold and too hot, and some are just right. That
sounds like a good analysis.
You're right. Wayne asked if it was possible to get some references to other municipalities that had done similar upgrades, and unfortunately, it's taken a while to get those. But as of today, Wayne now has 3 names. I know he emailed me back today saying that he had messages in to all 3, hadn't heard back yet. So, the goal is to get, at this point, to make sure that Wayne is comfortable with this, and we also need to talk about the the financial aspect of it. This could really go on for a long time. So
Pre or post?
Pre or post grant, you mean, or pre or
financial whatever.
Well, it would save us. So they broke it out into 2 phases based on the Green Communities grant program. Allows you up to $100,000 per project, and so for this building to do everything was more than that. So they broke it up into 2 different projects. One would have to proceed or be concurrent with the other one, and together they added up to, I don't know, 120 or 130,000. I don't recall the exact number, but then the expectation would be that utility incentives and then a Green Community grant or Green Community grants would cover the majority of the balance. Because the energy savings wouldn't be huge, we'd be kind of moving into this century, but the energy savings would be real, but they wouldn't be huge, and the payback, based on the simplest analysis, the numbers they came up with was like a 16.5-year payback. That's not for the town, that's for the total amount that would have to go into it. So, but.
that doesn't, that's if there were no incentives, you mean?
Correct, yeah, that's, say, if
If we pay for the whole thing.
no, or if Green Communities paid for the whole thing. If Department of Energy Resources paid for the whole thing through a Green Communities grant, their payback, the payback on their investment, of course, we would be the ones that would be realizing the payback benefit, but their payback works out to be between 16 and a half and 17 years, which is longer than they like to see. So it might require the town putting a little skin in the game. And so I talked with, on the first.
So they don't like that.
Right. If payback is never, or payback is really long, then they look at it and they say, well, where can we, meaning Green Communities, get more? Where can we get more for the money that we have available to put out as grants? So if
Then we could change the whole seating.
excuse me.
By 15 or 16 years, everything could be changed too. I mean, it's too far to advertise. Okay, I got you.
Yeah,
I'm thinking out
yeah.
loud.
It's possible, I guess. We might build a skyscraper here. So.
Doing one in Boston, like-
So after talking with the company, they're called B2Q, talking with the company that was doing this, they came up with a number that they thought if the town were to ante up, that it would make it more attractive for DOER. And the number they came up with was somewhere in the range probably of $8,000 to $10,000. I don't remember, it's in here, what the total project cost was that's for just the first system, for the first part of the job.
See, that's where I was a little confused. There's two sets of specs and whatever, so.
Right, and.
So we have to do both, is that it?
No. You have to do one either before or concurrent with the other. So the second one is dependent upon the first one. So the first one, total project cost $99,282. Estimated incentives are $18,000, leaving a net project cost of $81,000 plus. And there's a 16.6-year payback. And in that case, for that project, we would probably want to ante up something like $10,000 for our share of that project. The other project, based on the conversation I had today, we would probably want to wait for the next grant cycle or we could wait for the next grant cycle, at which point more incentives would be available. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but the utility is only going to give so much in the way of incentives, and it's so many incentive points per facility or per address. So the way they quoted this is they structured it so that in the first system, they used as many of these control points as possible to get as much incentive as possible, but there's no headroom left to do anything incentive-wise for the second project. So the second project will, what would be covered under the second project would operate just like it does currently for the next 2 years or until we applied for a future grant or decided we wanted to do it on our own.
So what is the
I
Energy Committee want us?
Yeah, the Energy Committee met a little over a week ago, and we thought it makes sense to proceed with this based on the conversation I had today, and I hesitate to speak for the entirety of the Energy Committee, although I'm guessing that people would agree with me, is that it would make sense to pursue the first one of these projects at this point in time through a Green Communities grant. If we don't get the Green Communities grant, we don't have to go ahead with it. In fact, if we do get a Green Community, I was going to say if we do get the Green Communities grant, we could still choose not to do it and not to take advantage of the grant, but that would, but yeah, then we'd kind of wear a black eye. Yeah, we'd burn, yeah. But they understand, DOER understands how municipalities work and that we have to budget and we have to get this funded through town meeting. So we could apply for the grant now, and if we didn't get funded at town meeting, then we could just withdraw.
What's their timetable? Like, when will we hear back that we have,
That's hard to say. In the past, when we applied for Green Communities grants, we heard I think it was midsummer. I believe last year, for some reason, they didn't notify communities they didn't arrive at the awards until sometime in late September, which was a problem for a lot of communities. My understanding is that should happen more quickly this year, but that's.
what if Wayne comes back after those recommendations, says, you know what, this, I don't want this in my buildings?
Then we stop in our tracks.
How much work is the application? It's due March 27th?
It's not a tremendous amount for us. I mean, most of the work is really done by B2Q, and then the utility.
All I'm thinking is about extra added work on any departments during the budget season.
Understand, and I don't think. Undoubtedly there'll be some time required by somebody. Mike, you've been through this before with other grants, and you probably recall putting a little bit of time up front. If nothing else, we ripped the hair out of our heads. Well, sorry, maybe. But trying to submit the COMBI's grant application was, that's worth a couple of years off your life right there.
Yeah.
But
the advantage that we do get is that since this is an energy-related project, they can operate under a different bidding cycle than the traditional one. And so what we can do is we could get the engineering done basically gratis, as long as we use that particular company to do the work. And of course, then it gets paid basically from the grant. So that reduces a lot of my work on it, because basically all then I have to do is set up a contract with that company, as opposing to go through a whole bidding project
Okay.
on it. So,
if we have to put some skin in the game to look good, do we need to do?
Is that gonna be an article?
Do we need to do an article for that, or what?
technically, isn't there already an article for like improvements to the town buildings on the warrant?
Well, there is, but it's
Yeah.
based on projects
I know,
that
but,
support that number.
yeah.
Are you saying to add to that?
Well, I
think
mean,
he's saying to displace something that is within that article.
And then,
Displace?
and then, I mean, if you needed that
Well,
much.
actually, I mean, with the articles there, could the number?
Why couldn't the number change?
Yeah, the number can,
Yeah,
the number can go up, nobody's really voted on it.
Yeah, no, that's a good,
Yeah.
yeah, sure,
The number could
yeah,
go up.
yeah.
Yeah, on the warrant, sure. Yeah, exactly. That would be, I mean, because I know we already have one for building improvements, so you can include that.
Okay, do you have any reservations or anything, Angus?
No, I mean, I think the way they're going about it, working with Wayne, I think that's exactly the right approach. And I was leaning over talking to Jenny, because I told Rick this earlier. I had the same observation as Wayne in my former jobs of, there's always somewhere's too cold, somewhere's too hot, it's blowing right on them. And I mean, my last job, we changed locations, events, we did all kinds of things trying to make people happy. And I'd like to think we made progress, but you can't make everyone happy. So I think that's where our main starting point is. You got a building where everybody's happy.
Right.
So
Why mess with it?
Right. And
Oh, yeah.
But I have to say, when I come in here, if I come in here on a Sunday in the middle of the summer, it's insane. It's
Yeah,
like
it is.
it's like
It is.
68 degrees. And
Same on
there's
the weekend, it's hot.
Nobody here.
It's like you want to invite all your best friends to come enjoy the nice.
Yeah, you'd like to think there would be some pictures.
So I'd make a motion that we would allow the Energy Committee to seek out this grant and increase the article by $10,000 to support our skin in the game.
Second.
As long as you guys, if you guys could, second discussion. You wanna discuss
Yeah,
this?
I just wanna say for discussion purposes, is it kind of obvious that, because they made the amount $99,000 and that
Oh,
they're
clear-
playing a
clear-
game with
yeah, no,
that?
no, clearly,
It seems a
yeah.
little obvious.
No,
yeah.
well, but,
Or is that
that's
they
routine.
expect that?
That's routine. No, I think they expect that, because if you were to look back at when we did the applications for lighting, same deal. You know, for lighting improvements, for using green.
Exactly.
Yeah, you just go a little bit underneath the threshold, and everybody understands why that's being done that way.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah. I mean, there is a threshold, so people work the system to go up to close to the threshold.
You go into the used car dealer and he says, how much do you, how much can you got to spend? Well,
Yeah.
We got just the car.
Right.
My Cisco, my food salesman always asks me that. I said, no.
Yeah.
He goes, well,
So-
how much do you want to pay for chicken? I said, no. How much are you going to give me the chicken for?
So I think it's just worth noting that, so we have an application deadline of March 27th, which is, just over, a month and a week away, essentially. So we do have time to get this all done, but we need to keep it moving. And I don't think that is going to require a whole lot on the part of Angus and other town employees. I think, I think we have momentum through the Energy Committee.
Well,
and,
do we
yeah.
have just specs on, how many cubic feet, all those kind of things that easily findable, because that's the kind of stuff they're gonna, the HVAC stuff.
Oh, no, they've already been here and seen what we have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, they came through and spent some time with Brian Richard and Wayne, looking at what's currently here. We got the obligatory tour up to the roof, which is always worthwhile. And
Hopefully it wasn't too icy. My thing would be, though, some work that you might need to do. It's easy to increase that article by 10 grand, but you might want to have the Energy Committee back that up and give some info, so when the Finance Committee looks at it, they understand, because I think there's already backup material from them on all the,
yeah.
that I read for the amount that's in there. So they're gonna be
Okay.
wanting to know what the extra 10 grand is, so you
Okay.
might wanna put something together that kind
Even
of
just
summarizes what you
even
told
just
us
a
tonight.
Okay, yep,
sentence,
that's valid, thanks.
Okay, so it's motion on the floor? It's been
All in
seconded?
favor?
Aye.
Meeting minutes, May 13th, April 29th, and April 22nd.
Ken, I would note that the April dates precede Rick's tenure, so he should abstain
Make a motion to,
separately.
approve the minutes of April 29th, 2019, and April 22nd, 2019.
Second, all in favor?
Aye. Make a motion
I had one,
on the May 13th?
on the May 13th, yeah.
You want to talk,
Item I, we usually abstain when we vote for, ourselves as the chairman or the clerk or whatever, so I think both of those votes on item I would be 2-0-1 instead of 3-0, so, that's all.
So I make a motion that we approve the minutes of May 13th, 2011 with those changes.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Update on financing and designer for the car post.
Well, before you get into why don't you start with
Oh,
design
wait.
selection, then we'll get to financing.
Okay, basically is that I'm still expecting a schedule of values from the architect, but I promised it, I'm gonna get this week, and I expect to get into contract by the end of the week, and then to get moving. So we should have the contract signed, sealed and delivered by the end of this week.
Great. Financing?
So the memo in your packet, you don't need to go through that in detail, but just want to kind of, I mean, there's two pieces of it. One is that the method of appropriating funds for payment of debt service from CPC is different than other CPC appropriations in that it does not need a specific referral from the committee heading up to town meeting. In fact, not only does it not need it, that's discouraged by bond council because the debt is already authorized by vote of town meeting, which obviously was preceded by CPC's approval of the project. So going forward for, whether it's 20 years, 21 years, whatever it ends up being, that obligation is already authorized. And so, bond council doesn't want to see any extraneous steps that, if they're missed or forgotten 1 year in that 20 years, call into question whether the town could expend those CPC funds. So because that's different than how other CPC expenditures are handled, I just wanted to be, make sure everyone understood that. And then secondly, in terms of estimating the amount of debt service, we're working really closely with our financial advisor. We actually brought them in to meet on Thursday, including myself, Stephanie, Jenny, and Sue James. We met for probably 2 hours. It was a really good, we went through a lot of different things. This was one part of it. But where this debt is closely tied to the 1.1 million for the water projects, where we have the bond anticipation notes that come due in July. By July, we need to either issue more bans for the water projects or roll that into long-term debt. We would only roll it into long-term debt if we were ready to borrow the 1.5 million. My guess is we're probably not going to be ready to, because even if we are, I don't know if we know we're going to be ready sufficiently ahead to start the process to issue bonds.
You might be ready the day before, but you're not gonna be ready a month and a half before,
Exactly.
where that's when all the preparation takes place.
Right, because so much is going to depend on the timing of design, the timing of the bidding, what the bids come back, because we're not going to want to issue debt until we know we've
What the
got
bids
project done for the, for the budget that we've got approved. So I think given those variables, we've looked at a couple of scenarios and I've got different financial models.
Just to play devil's advocate, Angus, we know what the car post is going to be when it's not going to be 2.7. We know it's going to be 1.5. So
hope.
why is that?
We hope.
Why is that subject to?
Because sometimes the bids and things change. By the time we bid it could be 2.7, or it could be 1.7, but we've only,
But you haven't.
but we only, I was just gonna, I haven't finished yet, we've only authorized.
Yeah, but if we can
Right.
only do half the job, then we probably, with the money we have, then we'd have to sit back and think, what do we want to do?
Oh.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, let's say, and I
We
think,
might not wanna do the project,
All right.
or we have to go back to town meeting to get the money.
I'd have a hard time going back to town meeting.
I get it.
So anyhow, we're looking at different scenarios, but I just want to, given that at some future time, you're gonna, be asked to vote to either issue long-term debt or to issue more bans, I just want to keep you apprised of the financing process as we continue to look at different scenarios based on what we know. And, there's still a lot that we don't know, where the designer's just now getting under contract and, by the time it's all bid out.
But their money is going to already be spent.
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's coming out of the 1.5.
Yeah, it's, correct, yeah, 1.25, yes. Is 1.25 of our.
Those are borrowing, 250 is up front. It's already
Oh,
appropriated.
that's right, so that's that could be out of the beginning part.
Yeah,
Exactly,
right,
that's what
right.
it's planned,
Right,
yes.
yeah, that was done
That's right.
intentionally for that,
Right, I
yeah,
forgot about that.
so that we could get the ball
So
rolling.
that money is not, that part is not being borrowed.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's complicated, but now.
It is, it's a complicated situation, that's why I wanna keep you guys apprised of it.
Thanks, Glenn.
So in terms of budgeting, we'll, as you know, we included a placeholder article on the town meeting warrant, so as we get closer to the signing of the warrant, we'll put in the right conservative number. I think there's a good, a good possibility where all we would pay on debt service in FY '21 would be interest on a ban. You don't pay principal, you just pay interest. But I think sitting here today, I would say we'd probably recommend including an estimated full year of principal and interest.
I would.
Yeah, I don't see
But-
there's any reason not to.
Yeah, but Angus, wouldn't that all come out of CPC automatically? It's not in our, it's not in our
But
omnibus
it has to be
budget.
appropriated. It does have to be appropriated
Okay.
by town meeting. It does not need to be referred by CPC because that process already took place in the fall, but it does need to be appropriated.
Yeah.
That would be.
So why would
be
you-
an annual.
Yeah, why would you cut it close? Why don't you just figure out as if it was gonna be a regular
Yeah,
payment?
You're right.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Yeah, we could just put in a high number and.
Yeah.
Just because you have to
Bring
explain
it
the
down.
number and, and not everybody,
It doesn't have to be.
Just to say, this is the most it could be.
yes. No, you're right. That's a good.
Because that's all, we're just supposed to
That's good, yeah.
inform the town of whatever we're supposed to. Anything else?
Not on that topic.
Okay, I sort of didn't know what your capital planning thing here was about.
Just making you aware of the process.
Okay,
Yep. It's nothing you don't know.
okay.
It's a real minor point on that, for whatever it's worth. The last paragraph, it says CIC will next meet on February 27th, is also penciled in a meeting for March 6th, it's actually March 4th.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's okay, but March 6th is the Friday.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, so
It's
March
the
4th is
yeah.
a Wednesday.
Yeah.
I only noted that because I'm flying out on March 5th.
Good. No, you're right. It's a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Friday at 7:30. That would.
No, it would not be a good meeting.
The next item on the town report, Jenny's been hard at work on that, got submittals from many boards and committees and departments, not every. We're hoping to have the selectmen report for your review at your next meeting. Because that's a missing piece, but you can't vote it until we give you something to vote, so.
Oh, good, as long as I don't have to write it this year. I'll support it.
Good cover.
So that's the question. Everyone good with the draft cover?
Yep, looks cool, looks good, I like it.
So there's no copyright
Well, that's what we want
things
to,
or?
we want to seek the permission, but we didn't want to,
Yeah.
until we didn't want to seek the permission and say, no, never mind.
I think Norman Rockwell's in trouble.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I don't think Trish will mind.
Okay. Oh, item M, there's nothing in your packet, I just wanted to make you aware, I did meet with Barbara Hawk at her request a couple of weeks ago, actually just last week, and as you know, she's the prime mover on the annual roadside cleanup, and that's always been, the town's always had a role in that, and, cleaning up, picking up the bags after the event. Last year, we did what we could to get the word out through social media and things. She has asked that we basically kind of migrate to become a town event. She'd like to kind of transition, step back from that. So I told her we'd be happy to do that. It's not gonna, and so that I think will be a very positive thing. She'll continue to be involved, but she wants to make sure it continues kind of
Independent of her.
memorial.
Yeah.
And so I think I'll work with Jenny on the messaging and get the word out, and Wayne, which they'll be doing what they've always done. I just wanted to make you aware that will kind of migrate toward becoming more of a official town event.
Good. It's always very interesting to see who eats McDonald's before they go home, right? And who has the little nips. You know, they have them, and it's the same almost every year, this roadside, me and another buddy clean up this thing, and you can tell who's not supposed to be eating McDonald's and they're on a diet, but they throw it out the window before they get home with their wife or their husband, and then same nips around in front.
I don't think
Fireball.
I don't think people realize that we do DNA testing. Great, and item N, I've seen, I'm sure you all have seen, you know, there's some activity out at Crown Spring Farm. So it's, you can see the thread in there with the building inspector. I think it's very exciting. They're reinvesting.
Yeah, yeah, it's great.
You know, I don't know if I was maybe missed something, but last fall I didn't know that that was going to happen. I thought
What?
that they felt that the house could be salvaged.
Everybody thought it could not be salvaged.
That was never,
Yeah.
it was always presented to us, that's the hope and the wish, but we're not sure.
Right. Yeah. So you know, when I reached out to first to Sam and then to Vanessa Johnson Hall, she said, "Oh yeah, they're definitely." And I was like, "Oh,
Oh, that's
great."
terrific.
And I didn't know.
Everybody in the know kind of said, no, it's been inhabited for so long, it's a tear down.
It's gotta be a
Yeah,
new
so,
wall,
yeah, so that's great.
So I did get a follow-up email from Sam, what the estimated value of the work that's being done. I won't quote it from memory because I'm not totally certain, but if you're interested in that, I do have that in terms of the building permit.
So no, that will be triple by the time I finish.
Item O, I've been including that just in case there's anything you want to ask me about that's not on the agenda.
No, I think we asked you enough.
Yeah.
More budget, yeah, we don't wanna ask anything else, but.
So this isn't a project, but just a curiosity, for the MVP workshop, I think Archie replied that he was gonna be there. I don't.
I can't
know-
be there.
You can't, okay. And Angus, did you think that you were gonna be there,
I
or?
have it as a likely.
Okay.
If it's not gonna put me over the edge to burnout, I'll be there.
Okay,
but,
okay.
I gotta keep it tentative.
All right,
The 29th, right?
okay, yeah, the 29th, yeah. So, yeah, but you're not, you said you won't be there,
No.
correct? Okay, all right.
It's all or nothing, right?
Um,
Because it's a long day commitment, so I might be
Yeah.
able to make a little bit of it. but
yeah,
there's
no,
a-
don't kill yourself. I mean, if,
No, but in the
yeah.
beginning, but I have a work thing that's going on in the afternoon that I have to be at.
Yeah, okay.
And it's a new client, I really don't.
Yeah,
feel
no,
comfortable with,
don't sweat it. I was
because
just trying
it's
to, I'm just trying
all or
to,
in.
just trying to do it like a head count, so that's
Oh.
fine. You know, if it, well, I mean, it's more than just a head count, but.
Do you have
know.
enough?
Huh?
You have enough?
Oh, yeah, no, I think there's, you know, last I knew is, I think about 45 people had responded that they'd be
Oh,
there,
terrific.
so, you know, I think we'll have pretty good turnout. Pretty good participation.
I might show up in the beginning just for support, and then I have to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, great, thanks.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.